All right, so here we go. It is Monday, our last full week. It is June 8th. Your ecology test is coming up this Thursday. So, needless to say, you're only going to have a couple of days to get it done. Your final project is due next Monday. I know a couple people have already gotten it. Look back, find the video, find the file if you need it. It was assigned not last Friday on the 5th, but the Friday before that, like the 28th. So keep those things in mind, and that's going to be it, folks. This test on Thursday will be the last graded work for our year. Beyond that, after this test, that Friday, Monday, Tuesday, and I'm looking at doing something different on Wednesday. But those days, I'm only going to be here to help people out, to try to finish things that people haven't finished yet because they're lost, they feel hopeless, they just don't know where to go. That's basically going to be it. That's how close we are. So, without too much further ado, let me introduce, or at least move us into, the scenario where we might just save this world. All right, there's a lot of gloom and doom out there, folks. Not just in our political, socioeconomic, society, and stuff like that, but ecologically, yeah, there too. The good news is that all those different things that are threatening the biodiversity of our planet, the ability for our planet to keep stable, uh, we can stop. We are the cause. Human overpopulation is a major, major issue that's driving all the rest of these. But at the same point, we can also be that shield that stops them. And as one of, if not the most powerful countries on this planet, it should really be us that picks the shield up and takes the first steps. Now, tomorrow I'll talk about why that's probably not going to happen and go over exactly what the Trump administration has done for ecological health. But this is the goal that we need to have. And there are lots of people fighting for it, even if the government itself is not one of them. So, we talked about deforestation, right? The cutting down. Well, lots of people are making efforts there. National Geographic started an initiative where they are attempting, and keep in mind, National Geographic is owned by Disney. Disney is one of the richest companies on the planet, where they're buying up forests and public land in order to keep them protected. And in order to maintain oxygen levels, yeah, 30% forest coverage would be enough to maintain Earth's oxygen level. We see more and more governments around the planet that have started to create policies and enforce them in order to protect lands. And there are over 75 organizations that just are out there actively trying to help people understand what the danger is and what we can do about it. This is replanting, and you can see the line. These are all little trees all the way back through here. So this is reforestation. Just taking what used to be there and planting it there again. Here's another example of it. You can see some areas have seen a wild and wonderful change due to this kind of a project. And just about all of you are probably familiar with Team Trees on YouTube. That happened just a couple months ago. Their goal was to raise the money, $20 million, to plant 20 million trees. That's by the end of this year. That's a lot of trees. Habitat destruction. Remember this covered things like mining and fragmentation because we build roads and things like that. Well, once again, people have taken the initiative to try to work on that. Wildlife corridors now exist, and I'll show you an example of that. Matrix habitat conservation means that when we're looking at an area that we know we're going to be cutting pathways through. We know we're going to be fragmenting or breaking it down. The idea is to try and engineer those things in the least intrusive way to maintain the maximum amount of habitat forest in a single clump. You know, other things, we talked about forest fires and about how we kind of made a mistake by trying to stop them. So now we're trying to let these things happen on that unowned land. Let them get back to the natural ecological patterns that they have. And our U.S. Department of Fish and Wildlife has identified over 50 species that it started recovery plans for in order to bring them out of endangered, out of threatened, and back to healthy populations. Now, these are both corridors. This corridor goes between farmland on either side, but it allows a pathway for the animals to move through in order to migrate or to otherwise remain kind of nomadic without, without totally breaking it down. Here's another example of a corridor that comes up and over a freeway, allowing the wildlife on one side to cross safely in their natural habitat across to the other side. Now, this is a particularly fun one. This owl is called a barred owl. Barred owls are endangered, in some places, critically so. And what a conservancy project. I believe it was the Nature Conservatory Project. What they did was they actually had one of their people discover a small population of these in an unknown area of swamp. They like to live in wet, swampy areas. And so what they did was they started quietly purchasing the land all the way around because it's swampland. Nobody wants it. So they were able to buy up hundreds of acres and then only excuse me, yawn, only after they had purchased that land, then they turned around and announced that they had found the endangered species living on it. Because upon doing that, now all of that land gets levels of federal protection. If they had announced it beforehand, then whoever owned that tiny little spit that it was found on, that would have been the only land that was protected. But now, with them as the owners of a large area of land and then declaring it, that entire area of land was declared the owl's territory. And therefore, laws and policy are enacted to keep people from encroaching on and affecting that land. It was a really, really clever way to go about it. This is what, like, the swampland that owl lives in looks like. Once again, not exactly the kind of thing that people would want. This sells for just dollars per acre. But if there was an endangered species there, whoever owns it might have suddenly decided, oh, now it's worth something. Now it's more valuable. We talked about monocultures, and here are our solutions to monoculture. There are none. Some of these threats we have good ecologically based solutions for. Some of them we don't. Monocultures are kind of necessary for our modern food machines. And when I say machine, I don't mean like a tractor or something that grinds up a cow. I'm talking about the food machine that keeps moving food from the farms that grow it to the stores that sell it to our plates where we can eat it. Right? That machine really kind of needs monocultures. And right now we're trying to find a good solution to it because in order to make it profitable, in order to provide the amount of food that people want, we have to be able to produce it in high density very efficiently. Otherwise, the cost for something like bananas would skyrocket. What about invasive species? Okay, we're doing better than we were before. Right now, most governments globally have put a great deal more money, manpower, and time and focus into trying to detect the invasive species either before they arrive, such as people searching your luggage, or in their initial arrival before they become established. We also saw that the Department of Environmental Control, the DEC, changed their rules and their guidelines to allow states to make much faster responses when one of these organisms is discovered. You know, you can see scenarios where they're actually offering cash rewards for anyone that can find the people who are responsible for the invasive species. And this is becoming relatively regular. Snakeheads down in Florida, where they're becoming a problem, and as they're coming up through the rest of the United States, generally have like $1,000 fine and jail time if you are found in possession of a live snakehead fish. The encouragement is if you catch one, you kill it, you eat it, you don't keep it because then it may get out somewhere else or somebody might release it. Here's an example. So this is called the cottony cushion scale. You probably see them. It kind of this version looks more like threads. We often see them and they look like little tiny fuzz things on plants. Well, what it actually is it's this little bug thing in there, and this is just like the protective layer around it, and it sucks the sap out of the plant. Well, by introducing the ladybug, which you may not think of it, but ladybugs are voracious predators. They will eat more than their body weight in other smaller bugs basically every day. They are they are the wolves of the micro bug world. Well, by introducing these ladybugs in, the population that was having its good and bad year spikes like this all of a sudden started to get wildly controlled to the point where it's still around, but it's at such a lower population number that it's really not causing any recognizable damage. That's what the damage threshold is. So biological controls can be super important and really, really useful. Then we have the more intense. I don't know if anybody worked on the lionfish, but this is real. And people in Florida and down along the ocean are legally modifying handguns to fire underwater so that people can go out fishing with them and just shoot lionfish. That's how bad the lionfish are in the waters as an invasive species. All right, so climate change. Just what we finished on Friday. You guys saw the video with Al Gore, The Inconvenient Truth, which is 15 years old and still relevant. And I got this still, and I apologize for the quality. All right, what I want to point out here is um, this is the global carbon index for the US, the amount that we're pumping out into the atmosphere that's affecting the globe, right? And you can see from 1770 it's going up and up and up. All right, now, if you follow this top line that I'm tracing right now, this line is where we expect it to continue as we move towards 2050. Each of these color coded little slices that you see here are other things that we have the technology to do 15 years ago, let alone now. And if each one of these were instituted, electricity end use efficiency, meaning Energy Star for stuff, it would reduce our carbon emissions by this much. Then, if we add on the other end use efficiency, things like insulating homes to make sure that the heat or the cold stayed in and there was less need to heat or cool, that will reduce our emissions by this much. Making sure that our vehicles, personal vehicles, are more fuel efficient, can drop it more. Other transport, like the tractor trailers that move our food and supplies, make them more efficient, reduce it more. Using renewable resources like solar and wind, reduce our emissions even more. CCS is carbon sequestration technologies and other supply efficiencies, meaning that energy is transported through the power lines more efficiently, that water is pumped more efficiently, stuff like that. If we were to do all of these 15 years ago, we would already be down to an emission standard that is below industrialization over here. So this is entirely possible. What we need people to be willing to do it. There are lots of ways that we can affect it. And make no mistake, I don't want to imply that the solution to climate change is us. Because if every human being on the planet went this route 100%, that would only reduce the greenhouse gases that we're producing by 20%. 80% of all of those gases come from industry. They come from businesses. They come from large coal burning plants and things like that. Those are the sources that really need to change. But even this could help. And you guys are free to look over it. It's not saying anything that you're not already familiar with. Now, if we don't, here is what we are going to be endangering, right? 821 million people will be undernourished because of droughts. 35 million people will be affected by flood, and that means loss of property, loss of income, loss of life. The acids are acidifying, which is breaking down their system. We're seeing these peatlands, which we're just discovering are really important, starting to break down. That's putting even more CO2 into the atmosphere. Heat waves and wildfires kill nearly 2,000 people a year. Right here, almost a million displacements, meaning that people within one country are displaced from where they are, and they're not leaving that country, but they are moving somewhere else within it. A million people moving around every year like that. Dropping our global ocean oxygen levels, highly tied to the acidification, and people getting displaced out of their country by weather events. 2 million or more. Like, these are really significant threats. Action has to be taken, and we're doing it. We are working on it. And I wanted to finish today. All of these things are very doable. We just need people who are willing to do it. There we go. Now I'm not muted. So keep that in mind. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about. Thank you very much, Caleb. Thank you for letting me know. Otherwise, this would have been a very weird finish to the video. So, tomorrow, we will talk about who is willing and who is not, and then what our moral and ethical and scientific requirement is. So, I hope to see everybody tomorrow. We're almost there, folks.